Next on the Georgia Vote.
I want them to see law enforcement in a positive way that they typically don't see.
Christian Wise Smith trying once again to become Fulton County District Attorney. He sits down with our Jennifer Bellamy about why he feels he should replace Fani Willis.
Also, Governor Brian Kemp putting his signature on a controversial labor bill this week. But find out why union organizers are drawing inspiration from one of our neighbors.
And we'll break down the week's headlines with Republican strategist and pollster Mark Roundtree and Democratic strategist Howard Franklin.
All next on the Georgia Vote.
From the 11 Alive studios, this is the Georgia Vote with Faith Jesse and Zach Merchant.
Welcome to the Georgia Vote. I'm Faith Jesse.
And I'm Zach Merchant. Interest in Georgia politics may be at an all-time high, and 11 Alive remains out in front, providing you with an open, balanced, and expansive look at how politics shape our lives every day here in the Peach State.
That's right, and now we embark on a new journey, and we want you to be a part of it. Through your comments and questions, we'll talk with the top newsmakers for Georgia and offer analysis from some of the state's most experienced political insiders.
Most importantly, this show is for you, the ones who will go to the polls this year to decide who will represent us from City Hall to the White House. As home to the world's busiest airport, Georgians feel the impacts of issues inside the air travel industry. Concerns about flight cancellations and delays continue to rise nationwide, particularly in the summer months. So we took the question to Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. What is being done to make air travel work better? He told us the Federal Department of Transportation is rolling out a new rule to make it easier for travelers to get refunds when things go wrong.
That's part of what's at stake in the new rule that we released this week, making sure that you get automatic refunds if you're canceled for any reason, or if you have a major delay so much so that you don't take your flight.
Now, automatic refunds sound great in theory, but Buttigieg is talking about a new federal rule. In reality, how easy is it to actually get your money back?
Yeah, that's exactly why we're doing this. There have been many refunds that people have been entitled to all along, but you had to send an email or get a hold of us to file a complaint. You had to do way too much work just to get money that was already owed to you. What this rule does is it says that a refund will automatically come back to you in 7 days or less in the case of a credit card, unless you proactively choose some other solution with the airline, like miles or something.
Secretary Buttigieg says that new rule goes into effect in 6 months.
Well, for the 12th time in her tenure as Vice President, Kamala Harris is planning a swing through Georgia. The VP is slated to be in town tomorrow for the launch of what her office is calling a nationwide economic opportunity tour. She's expected to moderate a conversation during her stop. Harris's most recent trip to Georgia was in February when she spoke at a rally focused on reproductive rights. The vice president's economic tour is also scheduled to hit Detroit sometime next week.
One of the most watched primary races in Georgia next month will be a congressional race southwest of Atlanta. This is for Georgia's 3rd congressional district. 5 Republicans are vying in that primary election to replace Representative Drew Ferguson, who is retiring from Congress. Those candidates we talked with say the southern border and inflation are their biggest issues, but they're also keeping an eye on those who will make the ultimate decision at the polls.
The people in Georgia State, they're not like, oh, inflation rate is now 3.5% or it used to be 7%. That's not what they talk about. They're like, why am I spending $1,000 more a month at the grocery store? You know, why is it so expensive to feed my family?
You say, can this person get stuff done at every level that he's participated in? The answer to that is yes, and that should be the deciding factor.
I think the voters of this congressional district, the district in which I grew up, I think the voters want an America First agenda, and that's what they want to see from their next congressman. And I want to do what I did for President Trump, helping him secure the border, helping him unleash our economy, helping him move the ball forward. That's what I want to do for the people of our district.
If none of the 5 candidates can win a majority, there will be a runoff. That would take place on June 18th. There are 2 Democrats running as well in this race, but it is expected to remain a safe Republican seat.
Well, union organizers say they now have a new life in Georgia after an auto assembly plant in Chattanooga recently voted to unionize.
Doug Richards from 11 Alive's political team examines how a past of chilly receptions for unions may now be thawing into a slightly warmer embrace.
Many Georgia workers were among those celebrating in Chattanooga last weekend when a Volkswagen auto assembly plant voted to unionize. Union backers say the Volkswagen contract could give them momentum to unionize a Mercedes auto assembly plant next month in Alabama.
And it's not just Georgia, it's the South. Workers are seeing that they're being underpaid compared to their counterparts in other places.
Yvonne Brooks says the auto workers in Chattanooga have joined laboratory, food, and sanitation workers in Atlanta that have also quietly ratified union contracts. A year ago in central Georgia, workers at a school bus manufacturer called Bluebird unionized at their electric bus assembly plant.
Because we're a right-to-work state.
But at the Capitol, Republicans successfully pushed a bill this year that could limit state incentives for new union-friendly businesses locating in Georgia.
Because your company's getting an incentive from the state that if you legally can offer the secret ballot, that you will.
Governor Brian Kemp signed the union restrictive bill into law Monday.
A part of this bill is just a fad that the states in the South are putting forth.
Brooks says such measures have become politicized, even though she says many Republicans are now quietly playing ball with organized labor.
It's not a partisan issue. It is a worker issue. It's a worker, family, and community issues.
When we come back, we'll hear from Christian Wise Smith about his campaign to unseat Fulton DA Fani Willis.
And later, we are heading down to the farm for our very first Voice of the Voter segment.
To make decisions, you got to have a seat at the table. And as a lead prosecutor, I like to be at the head of the table.
Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis from a recent fundraising dinner for the Cobb County Democrats as she campaigns to remain Fulton County's district attorney. Her first major test for staying at the head of that table will be the May 21st primary. There, she will face a familiar opponent, Christian Wise Smith, as both were in the Democratic Party primary 4 years ago. Our Jennifer Bellamy sat down with Wise Smith to find out why he's taking another crack at being Fulton County's top prosecutor.
I know you've run for office before. I know you have a history in working with the Fulton County District Attorney's Office. What's really driving you to run for this particular office?
So in addition to, my personal background that I just mentioned and, my professional background, I feel like I'm being called to do this. This job is bigger than myself. I want to do something so bold and so different that the White House will call us in Fulton County and say, you guys are the model for how we do, criminal justice, and how do we do what you guys are doing in Fulton County. And we're going to focus on three things. We're going to make the office focus on victim-centered prosecution. We're going to end mass incarceration and dismantle the school-to-prison pipeline. If we do those three things, we'll see a really big shift in Fulton County that really helps keep our families and our citizens safe in ways that we aren't seeing right now.
We've seen some really big personalities, some really big folks who have held this office before in the past. We know that Fani Willis, the incumbent, is running again. Why should voters look to you instead of her?
Well, so one, I didn't jump in this race to, throw any personal attacks at her. I don't believe in campaigning that way. I'm not sure when politics became about, who can say the worst thing about their opponent. It should be about what you want to bring to the job. And I know her personal life has become very public, and, I feel for her in that sense. But my vision for the office is completely different than hers. Right now she's focused on Trump, and rightfully so, but that leaves so many people in Fulton County vulnerable. If you think about what's going on in the jail, the ACLU brought a lawsuit against the DA's office for having people sit in jail for too long. People are dying in the jail because of the horrible conditions there. So there are a lot of things being neglected by so much focus and energy and time and resources and manpower really going toward one case that is negatively impacting the rest of us in Fulton County. And so I want the people of Fulton County to know that if I'm elected, and should that case still be there once I take office, that we're not only going to focus on that case like we should, but we're going to make sure we're addressing everything else too.
You beat me to all my questions, because I was going to ask you, what would you do as district attorney in terms of the case involving former President Donald Trump and other co-defendants?
So we all know, we all heard the phone call, we all know, a lot of the facts that happened surrounding that case. There's a lot of chaos and controversy going on with that. But it is a case that most people in Fulton County care about, and a lot of people across the country have eyes on that case, and they want to see justice brought forward. And if I take office and that case is there, we're going to do just that. My fear is, because of some of the chaos, going on around the office and around that case, that the case might be in jeopardy right now, and the case might be gone before I take office. And that was one of the concerns that a lot of voters had before I jumped in the race. Like, if I jump in the race, they were fearful that somehow that would cause the case to go away, or they thought that I would not want to see the case through. But that's not what we want to do at all. We want to see that case through. We want to see justice served.
Jennifer Bellamy joining us in studio now. So, Jennifer, you sat down with this opponent who is hoping to unseat our current DA. We know that you had an extensive conversation. What was your biggest takeaway from it?
I think that Christian Y. Smith believes that he can bring more change and more focus to the office of district attorney. He does have some history within the Fulton County District Attorney's Office. He has run for public office before. So he feels that he can shift some of the focus while still working, especially, for example, the Trump case and the YSL RICO case, but also shift things to focus more on things that voters are really concerned about as well, keeping them safe and getting some movement through the judicial process.
Obviously, this conversation was with Christian Y. Smith. I wonder if you've heard anything from Fulton DA Willis.
Well, we did reach out to her team several times and have not heard back, but I will say we have heard back from the Camp 4 Courtney Kramer, and she's a Republican who will be hoping to challenge either District Attorney Fani Willis or Christian Y. Smith. And so we're working to see as soon as we can schedule something with her so voters can hear from her as well.
And we have just about 10 seconds left. Big takeaways. Is there anything we missed in that interview that you think voters should know that didn't quite make air?
Well, we did leave a lot on the table for everyone, so we'll be having our full conversation on our 11 Alive digital platforms, YouTube, and our 11 Alive Plus app as well, so people can see the full conversation.
Jennifer, thank you very much. And to reiterate, we did reach out in an attempt to talk with District Attorney Fani Willis about the race, as you just heard, but she declined to comment. She previously said she would not take part in tonight's scheduled Loudermilk Young debate with Christian Y. Smith. You can catch more of Jennifer's interview by watching it on demand on the 11 Alive Plus app. It is available for free on Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and Apple TV.
Well, still ahead, we hear from the voice of the voter. But first, two veterans of our political landscape, Howard Franklin and Mark Roundtree, join us to break down this week's top political takeaways. You're watching The Georgia Vote.
Time now for our political roundtable. Today we have Democratic strategist Howard Franklin. He has worked on campaigns throughout the Southeast, including his time leading Andre Dickens' successful 2021 campaign for Atlanta mayor. He now leads the consulting firm Ohio River South. And Republican strategist and pollster Mark Roundtree. He's run numerous campaigns in Georgia and is the founder and president of Landmark Communications based here in Atlanta. Fellas, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Let's start with you, Howard. I want to get your thoughts on the interview we just saw with Christian Y. Smith. You've got a lot of experience in Atlanta politics. What's your big takeaway?
Yeah, sure. I think Christian's put himself on the ballot before. He's obviously familiar with running for this position in particular. And I think what I'm expecting from him is to show us a little bit more than just and I think in the interview he did some of this really to present his own vision for the office, but also how is he going to get that message to the largest county with the most voters in all of the state of Georgia. I haven't seen a whole lot of that yet, but he's got 4 more weeks.
And Mark, I want to sort of give you the opposite side of that coin of a question here. You've run campaigns for incumbents. You've run campaigns for challengers. District Attorney Fani Willis has been in the news a lot this year. She's got big-time name recognition. Right. Not all of that news was what you might call the most favorable coverage, especially when we think about the disqualification saga and the Fulton County election interference case involving former President Trump and others. She ultimately was allowed to remain on that case, but her special prosecutor and one-time romantic partner Nathan Wade was removed by the judge in this case. There were a lot of international headlines, a lot of national headlines, and a lot of local headlines. But it's been said that in the end, all press is good press. When you look at this race, do you think all of that helped or hurt her more?
With this particular upcoming electorate, it will hurt her more. And it's easy in a normal election to say it would be a benefit because it is name recognition and a challenger doesn't have name recognition. Right. There are if you look at the 2020 general primary, the Democratic primary in Fulton County, there were 175,000 people voting that year. The number dropped, and that was the COVID year, if you remember. In 2022, that number dropped to 112,000, and this year, because there are virtually no primaries going on, no primaries are going on statewide at all, and there are no serious congressional primaries. So you're looking at possibly 90,000 people voting in this election, and the smaller it gets, the more, I think, the smaller the primary turnout gets, the more people are going to be very aware of the negatives in this issue. So I think she could have some trouble if the challenger can put up enough of a message. I don't know that he's hit that yet, but this is possible to defeat her.
Gentlemen, I want to switch gears here from the DA race to the presidential race. Several recent polls show former President Trump up as much as 8 points here in Georgia against Biden. This is polls taken in March and April. In 2020, we know that Biden narrowly won the state. A popular phone call, I believe it was just under 12,000 votes, right, where he won the state. So as we look ahead to 2024, and I want to get both of your opinions on this, Mark, we'll start with you. What does the Trump campaign have to do to try to flip the state back red?
Well, it's already happening, actually. Biden, on the official vote, without getting into the whole fight over, ballots counted and things like that from 2020, Biden won the official vote by only just over 11,000 votes. In terms of 5 million voters casting their ballots, that's virtually nothing. It's a very close election. The polls do currently show, and I have a caveat for you, the polls do currently show Trump leading. However, it's going to be closer than what those polls show because a lot of the people who are saying they're undecided are African-American voters. That is also almost entirely true in every poll that's done, that African-American voters break late in surveys and polls toward the candidate, and this is an electorate that traditionally votes about 94 to 96% Democrat. So no matter what the polls say, you sort of have to allot that part of the vote to Biden. So Trump may be up by a legitimate point or 2 or 3, but that's all. No matter what, the Bloomberg poll, which shows he's up by 6 or 7 points right now, that just came out a couple days ago, it's a lot closer than what the current polls are showing.
And Howard, could you weigh in on this as well in the Biden camp? I mean, he's looking at it, and like you said, I mean, Biden seems like he's trying to get black voters to get behind it.
He absolutely is. I think there's a lot of energy and effort being put forward to that point. I think that the polls, rightfully so, scared Democrats, right? They didn't know that they were falling as far behind, especially in really important battleground states. I think Nikki Haley voters are tremendously important. 77,000 or so decided to still cast a ballot for her in the presidential primary, even though she had dropped out of the race a week or two before. I also think that, the president's national politics have to come to some degree of stability, whether that's the war in Gaza, whether that's how inflation looks and feels to average Americans, average Georgians. I think he's got to do 2 things at one time. One of those is really addressing some of those bigger national issues, but then also spending time supporting surrogacy, et cetera. I know there's a tremendous number of events by folks in the White House and other prominent surrogates coming to Metro Atlanta, coming to Georgia the next few weeks.
And we are, just because we're running out of time here, I want to shift gears once more, Mark, if you forgive me. We got about 20 seconds left. I want to ask you each this, answer in just one sentence. The biggest issue to Georgia voters in this election cycle is going to be what?
Trump, whether he's going to talk about himself or whether he's going to talk about Biden. If he talks about Biden, he wins.
Howard, last word to you.
I'd agree, but I think the economy is always going to loom large over a national election, so I'd say the economy as well.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for that conversation. We appreciate your expertise and insight. When we return, we will head to Henry County to learn what's on the mind of one prospective voter this year. Find out what will guide his ballot choices this election year.
Georgia is one of the true swing states in the nation. The results here will help decide the race for the White House. Campaigns are going to spend big money on polling and staff to try to understand the electorate. But we think the best way to get to know our neighbors is face-to-face. After all, you can't have the Georgia vote without Georgia voters. And each week you will hear directly from them in their own words. This week, we head to Southern Bell Farm in McDonough, where owner Jake Carter runs a family farm that has evolved into an agritourism destination.
It's just nothing like raising a family on a family farm that I was raised on.
Your roots are here.
That's right. Yeah, I'm the 5th generation. My great-grandfather was a sharecropper. He didn't own any land. He saved up enough money to buy part of what the farm is today.
When you look ahead to the November election, what's your biggest worry?
The thing that concerns me is in this country today, on both sides of the aisle, I think we spend too much time focusing on issues that divide us as a country. And that concerns me for my kids and my grandchildren.
What are the 2 biggest issues that are going to govern how you vote in November?
You know, we're obviously in agriculture. I'm a farmer. I work in the dirt for a living. You know, there's so many uncertainties when it comes to agriculture. There's disease, there's weather, environments that, you know, we're not guaranteed to make a crop. Anytime that we can encourage our elected officials to stop the regulatory overreach into agriculture.
Regulation, that's issue number 1. Is there a second issue that is also going to be prominent in your mind as you fill out your ballot?
You know, the cost of things right now. I mean, it costs a lot to put a crop on the plates of, you know, Americans now. You know, the inflation's real.
The last thing I want to ask you, we've talked about your worries. We talked about the issues that are going to help you decide who and what to vote for in the fall. We always want to end on this. What are you optimistic about?
You know, I think as I'm concerned about the future of our country, I think that Americans probably feel the same way. They think about their kids and their grandkids, and you know, we as a country need to start putting elected officials in office, no matter what side of the aisle, that have the best interest of the American people and quit fighting over partisan politics. I mean, the things that go back and forth, I mean, there's work to be done as a country. Focus on the things that unite us. Let's move forward as a country together.
A point of view, Zach, I'd argue you don't hear too often nowadays. What was your biggest takeaway from this?
I think what was interesting about Jake Carter is that his answers to what his biggest worry were and what his most kind of optimistic point, they were almost identical. He's worried about partisanship and sort of the rancor we hear so much at the national level of politics, but he said he's optimistic. He's sort of heartwarmed by the fact that he feels many others share that concern. They don't want the noise so much.
Yeah. No, I think it was a great interview. Glad we got to hear from him.
And it's important to make sure we hear, you know, from those voices. We want to hear from everybody.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for watching us. That is it for the Georgia Vote today.
We hope to see you back here next Sunday at 11 for another edition of the Georgia Vote.